So today, Bob Ross says hi, and he also says hi. I'm wearing Bob Ross trinkets today. I think I'm going to mute you, Gretchen. So you are all muted, but if you want, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions at any time. I welcome that. And we're going to talk about rocks today. So in our overall painting, so I'm going to show you this one where the rocks are finished. So in this example, the rocks are very small. They're just here because I wanted to do a demonstration of the tree. So I made the rocks a lot smaller, but you can tell where the rocks are. Now, in this other painting that I showed you before, this is something else where I showed you the tree. Now you can see the rocks are all sorts of different colors. So we have some pink here. There's some blue, like a blue-gray over here. This is more like a brownish gray. And then here we almost have like a purple, some purples in the rocks here. So rocks basically are all sorts of different colors. And in the case of what I'm going to demonstrate today, so in this case, in this example, I didn't put the tree. I focused on the rocks. And I know the horizon line is kind of like almost in the middle. So this would not be a good composition, but in terms of showing the rocks, I show them bigger so you can see them better. And the colors that we see here, I'm going to do a close-up. So we can see a nice purple here, and then a nice brown here. And over here, it's almost like a bluish purple in this area of the shadow. Now we can see some nice dark gray, lighter gray, even lighter, almost white gray. And there's almost some like yellow ochre here, the color that we see here along the side. This is almost green. So rocks can be all sorts of colors. This one almost looks pink. And then you have the purple on the side here, lilac almost. And back here, it's like it's all the rocks, they all blend together. Basically, the rocks, they have different colors because they're made of different material. And also they have different colors because on the rocks reflect what is around them. So if there's a lot of blues in the painting, or in your photo, if you're taking photos, there's a good chance that the rocks will have a lot of blues in them. If you have a big tree with a lot of greens, then there's a chance that there may be some greens reflecting on the rocks. But there's also the composition of the rocks themselves that will help determine or give the different colors to the rocks. So I pre-recorded a video of painting the rocks, which I thought I would show you. Now this pre-recorded video it runs for 20 minutes, but I'm just gonna make it go a little faster. So basically in this example, we have, I don't even know where this is. Anyway, we have the rocks here. The rocks will go where the white area is. So we have the water, the background mountains, which I made very high on my cameras just so I could have bigger, a larger set of rocks. And then the cement wall, the top of the cement wall here, the pathway, and then the shadow here. And so in this case, I decided to paint each rock one by one, and painting first the top surface, then its side, and then the side that's against the cement wall, and then the other side. Here I'm adding another rock in the shadow. So if you look here, now I added a little rock here in the shadow. And then I painted the other rock. And so this is the top of the other rock, this gray. And then here is the side of this rock, which is dark because the light comes from the left. So here on the left-hand side of all these rocks, there's no line per se. So the water is what creates the edge of the rocks. So the water against the rocks should be a little darker than the rocks. So here I've repainted the edge. So you can see here, the rock is lighter and the water is darker. That's how I defined the edge of these rocks. I didn't draw a dark line here. I'm painting another rock. This one is pointed and a little darker. And so after I've done this rock, then I'm adding the other one, and I'm making sure that the shadow that's against the cement wall defines where the edge of this rock is. And the higher I go, then the less there will be the difference, in the rocks, because then when they're up here, then it becomes a big blob of gray. So that's what I did. And then once I had painted this, I wanted to make sure. I was looking at the photo and I realized that the water should actually be lighter. So I went and I added more white to my water. And you can't necessarily distinguish the edge, but that's okay because that's not where the center of interest is. This is where the center of interest is, in the front. And I'm just repainting. Once I was here, I've decided to repaint the water a little bit lighter at the top. So I started from the top and I added more white in it. And here I added a little bit more white on the side of the rocks. And so that shows the edge. Now I'm keying on the top of these rocks where the light is hitting so that we can see the rocks and have more of a shape to them. Note how I hardly ever paint with the tip of the brush, but more like with its side. And here I'm using gray. So to paint these, I've used the same colors that we have been using so far: titanium white, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and primary yellow, and a combination of those. So to start my actual demonstration today that I will do live, I will start by talking a little bit about those colors and how we make them. Is there any questions about this demonstration? Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. I can always play this again if you'd like. And this is something that I've done before we painted the tree. So I did the colors of the tree that we could use and how to make them. This is something I always used to do when I was in art school. I would use something like this, like a little scrap of acrylic paper or canvas. In this case, I'm just using a little canvas pad. But you can do this on a little thing like this, or you can even use a full sheet of acrylic paper. And so you test your colors, and you can even write, below it how you make this color. So maybe this is 2 parts blue, 1 part red, for example. And then same with all of the colors that you want to use. And then you can always refer back to this as your color swatch. to paint the portion that you're going to paint. So I'm going to use this to show the different colors that I make for painting the rocks. So first we have the very dark area of the rocks. The very dark area of the rocks, one could think that this would be a nice deep purple. So using some blue and some red, I get a nice deep purple. Try to make it dark. And so I'm just going to put a little water in it. I put it here so you can tell how dark this could be. And then if I really make it thinner, then you can tell more of the color. So this nice deep purple, this has a little bit more blue, a little bit less blue, more water makes it lighter in color. So this could be a nice deep color for the areas that are in the shadow. And if I add a little bit of yellow to this nice deep purple, then I get this becomes a brown color. And this could also be a nice color for my shadow area. So if I make it lighter, so I'm getting this. Now this can be, it's almost like black. And even for me here, it's almost like black. Once you let this dry, if you do another layer on it, it will become almost black. So this is a combination of my purple with a little bit of my yellow, and it gives more of a brownish color. And this is the same thing with more water. So when you need a nice gray, you can use this color for the rocks. Now, how about if we have I'm going to go back to here. And so we have these colors here, like this, for example. This is a nice, this is even more of a brown than the example that we have here. So I would think it would request a little bit more yellow to the mix here. Well, actually, it's not working now. This is giving me more of a olive green. That could also work for my rocks. So you can tell here, this color is more, it's closer to an olive green, but this color could also be used for the rocks. And as I remember it, like over here, this is almost this color, or even like this area here is almost this, the color that I just made there. So it could be used for that. Now, if I want, oops, it's dripping. Now, if I want a true gray, like what's a true gray? How do you make a true gray? So to make a gray, what I like to do is I like to start with a purple. So mix of my blue and my red. Now a true purple, not a magenta. So first I mix my purple, and then to my purple, I will add a lot of yellow. And as it turns brown, that's when I add a little bit more of my blue. And it's going to give more of a gray color. So if I go here, gives me this color. And then if I add white to it, now it's turning to a real gray. So if you see here, so this is the, I started with a purple, I added the yellow, and then when I was getting the brown, I added more blue. And it gave me this color with a lot more. And when I added white to this color, it gives me this color, which is a nice, beautiful gray. Any questions about how to make these colors so far? All right, well, one thing that we haven't created yet is a blue gray, because we have a lot of blue in this painting. So therefore there is a chance that, you know, some of those colors around in the landscape would reflect on the rocks and make them a little bit of a bluish gray. So to this color that we just made here, we could add a little bit of blue. Just a teeny little bit. More white. And now we have like a bluish gray. It's more blue. See, this one has more blue in it. This one has a little bit more pink in it because it came from the purple. And to this color, I added blue, just a teeny bit, and more white. And it gave me this nice blue gray. So we can go on forever making colors here, but I want us to now focus on trying to paint those rocks. So I want to make sure you can see this. Actually, I'm going to make this a little forward so you can see it better. Okay, but you want to see also how I mix my colors. So I'm going to remove these colors just because I want to use this section of my palette. So I'm going to start by mixing a gray that is like a mid-tone gray. So if I look at my example down here, so I'm going to start by mixing a color that is equivalent to like this mid-tone gray, this one here, or it's the same here. That's what we're going to do. If you want to paint along, by all means, please do. I'm using a filbert brush that's very old, so it's kind of losing its shape, but I kind of like that. You can also use a flat brush like this. This would work. You can also use a round brush like this. I will eventually use more than one brush because I want to have one color in one brush and another color in another brush. So let's first create this nice gray, a mid-tone gray. So starting with, I'm going to start with my purple. Ooh, too red. Remove some red from my brush. Too red. More blue. Yes. So now I have my purple. And in my purple, that's one thing we didn't do as an example, but I'm going to add my white into my purple. Ooh, it's giving me a very nice mid-tone color, but it's a little too purple. So to this, I'm adding just a tinge of yellow. And now this is turning a nice mid-tone gray, like this. So I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to paint the top of the rocks. Ooh, actually, my brush has a darker tone than what I have in my example. So I'm going to remove this. Make sure that I use this color, not what I have on my brush. Okay, clean my brush. Now I'm getting this color. And I'm going to paint the top of the rock with this color. Actually, I need a little bit more white in it. And now, as I'm painting these rocks, I'm making this color over and over and over again. So here we go. Yeah, this is good. So I have a nice mid-tone color for the top of the rock that is here. And I also have this foreground rock here that is also flat. So I'm painting this with my mid-tone and using more mid-tone, making it as I go. Make sure it's kind of like a bluish color with some white. And here I also have my, oh, a little too dark, more white. I also have my other rock, which is a little pointy rock for what we have on the photo. So this is good. All right, so I have my 3 main rocks. There's also one here in the shadow. So I have my 3 main rocks that we can see here. And now to this mid-tone, I'm going to add my darks. And to do my darks, I'm going to use my round brush. And I'm going to mix a nice deep purple, starting with blue, adding the red, too much red. Always add too much red. So I want a purple. In this purple, I'm actually, as a first coat, I'm not even going to add any yellow. So using this nice deep purple, I'm going to paint the shadow of the rocks. So there is this background shadow here. This is like the back of the rock. Actually, I'm going to paint over this one. Now, one thing that's important is that the cement wall is straight. So the cement wall is like this. And then we have this other rock here. It's kind of, I'm going around like this. And back here, this is still very dark. And back here. All right. Now to this color here, I'm going to add a little white, little yellow. I think I add a little bit too much. I just want the same purple, but just a little lighter to put on this face of my rocks. Now let's add a little bit more yellow. So I'm gonna go like this. Show you how. So like this. And here, this one, like this. So this is the side of this rock. The side that's facing us. And this area here is the side that's facing left. And on the other side of it is another rock. It's kind of like lighter. Very rare that's a rock is this. Very rare that a rock is round. Now referring back to the photo, when painting rocks is a good idea, just so that you can remember. I remember this rock is more like this. So you can tell, instead of making it up, you can actually paint the rocks as they are from the photo. I mean, once you get used to it, then you can make your own shapes. And I remember that this one has got to go like this. All right. So now we've started with our rocks. This one here doesn't have a color. So I'm giving it this like one in the shadow. And there is another one in the shadow there, which I covered up. I'm just going to paint it back. So we started with this. Now I look here. So far we've painted this part and the top, but we didn't put the highlights in. And we painted this part here. And we painted this little buddy here. So now we're gonna add. Well, we've painted this one, but we didn't put the highlights, and we didn't paint this one here. Maybe it would look better. Or like this. I'll just put it on display for me, so this way I can paint correctly. All right, so I'm going back to my nice gray here. How did I make this gray? I started with purple, blue, and red. And in this purple, I added a teeny little bit of yellow and some white. Maybe a little bit more yellow. Yes, a little bit more white. Oh, a little too light maybe. This is giving me my gray again. Very similar to this, very similar to this. Not exactly the same. It's okay, because you know what? In nature, rocks are never exactly the same to one another. So I'm adding this other rock that's like over here, like this. It just sticks out, and I remember from the photo. And this pointy rock goes like this. I'm painting it. Now I'm losing the edge between the two, so I'm using my other brush that has gray on it to indicate where the edge between the two is, right here. All right, and then this one here requires also an edge, so I'm using a little bit of my purple and gray and adding this. Ooh, very dark, but nice. All right, so now we're starting to see this grouping of rocks grow, and as it grows, now I'm realizing this should be bigger. And then over here on this side of this rock, actually should be a little lighter, but so I would want to have this a little bit like this. And using my lighter brush, I can add this other, oops, not light enough, this other rock right here. need to make more of my purple now. To use the deep purple to continue this side. That's alongside the cement wall. Now as we, whoops, here it is. And then alongside the cement wall, I can just now put just a line. Oops, not enough water. Drying up. So I'm gonna go like this. Yes. And as we're getting towards the back, then all the rocks, if you look at the photo, they become like a big gray thing. So I'm just gonna put this gray back here like this, because the rest of the rocks are not going to be super defined. Making sure that I'm putting an end to this one rock. There, like this. All right. And so now we have the rocks, and they look like this. And they're starting to take shape. Now's the time, if your water is not dark enough, now would be the time to make it darker. If this is not light enough, now would be the time to make it lighter. But we haven't put the highlights on the rocks yet. So if you look at the two, one next to the other. So on these rocks, I haven't put the highlights yet. And here you can see I went over these areas, especially closer to the water or where the light catches, and I put some highlights. And this is all things that, from looking at the photo, I can see that there's some light in certain areas, and that's why I went and added those highlights. Now, the top of a rock is very rarely a very flat surface. So it's okay to have a little grayer, a little lighter gray here, a little darker gray, and then another kind of mid-tone, darker, something else. It's good. So this way, the rocks will look more real. And edges of, the difference between where the shadow is and the light area is, the edges don't have to be completely a complete straight line. It's better if they're a little bit broken up edges, because rocks are very rarely cut, thin cut. All right, so at this time, before I put the highlights, I'm going to stop the recording. So now we're going to put the highlights on the rocks. And some of you may need to do this, so that's what I'm going to do. In this case, I think that the water looks pretty good, but let's say your water needs to be lightened a little bit here and darkened here, or maybe it's the reverse, maybe it's just too light altogether and you just want to darken the whole thing. Anyway, you can repaint the water, and if you're going to repaint the water, then I would suggest you go and paint it upside down. So if we compare the water on this example here with this one, I mean, we can tell here that there's some nice pink here that we don't have this here. So I would like to add this pink. And you can see there's a nice contrast between the rocks and the water. And this water is not nearly as dark. So I'm going to turn it upside down and paint my water again. Excuse me. To paint the reason I'm turning it upside down is so that I can go here right up against these rocks easily with the tip of my brush like this. If it were the other way, it would be difficult. So I'm going to make the colors for my water. So starting with the darker one. So this darker color here that I've made, it has to be darker than the darkest area in the sky. And so in this case, this is pretty much equivalent to this in terms of tone, or maybe even lighter. I have to make it darker than what I have here. So in your case, you need to look at your painting and compare, your sky with your water. And is the sky lighter or darker? The sky is always lighter than the water. And the reason being that what we see in the water is the sky. And light objects always reflect a little darker in the water. So that's why you want to have your water a little darker than your sky. So to do this, first I'm going to just clean my palette so you can see. So first I'm going to make the color for the water here, which is, it's a light blue. Since it's a bit of a grayish day, if I were to use this color, it would be too much of a purple color. You can see here, too much of a bluish color. So I'm going to put a tiny little bit of the yellow in it. Very, very little yellow. But it's going to give me a little bit less of a purplish blue. And if I were to paint this on here, now this would be very dark. And when it dries, it's going to be even darker. So I want to add a little white to this. So if I go like this, and I put this here, like this, and it's almost the same, I'm good because it's a little darker, and when it dries, it will be even darker. So that's good. So I'm going to start that way. So I'm going to take this and paint this whole thing. Starting with my dark. I'm going to make sure here that I go around all the way to the rocks. Looking at my rock. This rock is sideways. That's good. And then it goes here. Now there's a chance also to reshape some of the rocks in some cases, like here. Now as I'm coming up, I have to add a little bit of white to my blue. Not too much, because I don't want to lighten it too much, too fast. And up against these rocks, I want to make sure I'm still dark. And here. So it's okay to have a little bit of a darker color along the rocks. And then it goes lighter away from the rocks. I'm just adding white to my mixture here. Going over it like this. Now I'm going with lighter color for my water. Just a tinge of yellow. Now I'm adding more white because I want my water to be lighter now. And as I go towards the top, I'm going to add a little bit of pink to this color. So to do the top part, I will probably turn it upside up. Now I'm going to turn it upside up and add a little bit of red to my mix. Not too much, just a little pink. And make sure it's still light in color. And add this at the top here. Ooh, too pink, too pink, too pink, too pink. So sometimes what I do is I start again on the side because I just went too pink. And then I get some more in my new mix. I'm just going like this. A little too dark, so I'm adding more white. All right, so now I've repainted this water, and I'm going to take a clean brush, make sure that the edge of this water is straight. So that's how I do this. I clean my brush, I dry it, make sure it's clean. Yep, dry it on the paper towel, and I just go against here like this to make this edge straight. Like this. Because if it's not straight, it's not gonna look right. And at the same time, it makes the edge smooth by doing this. And I have my water newly painted with a nice pink background coming towards the darker here, and I'm ready to put the highlights on these rocks. This here, example. All right, highlight on the rocks. Now we're gonna make grays, but this time the grays are gonna be lighter than the grays that we had made before. Just need a new paper towel because my old paper towel is completely gone. All right, so to make the highlights on the rocks, I'm going to use my small round brush like this. And I'm going to start with the purple again. So blue and red. And I'm going to add a ton of white to it. And I'm going to remove what I have on my brush because now I want to add a little bit more blue to it and even more white, tinge of yellow. So now we're getting this color. So this is the color that we're getting now. So it's lighter in tone than any of the other colors that we have. And this could use even more white actually. So if I put even more white, then I get more white. Then I get a gray that's even lighter, you can tell here. So I'm going to use this to put on my rocks, to put the highlights on my rocks. Like so. This is my gray. So, and the highlights will be on the edge of the rocks. Like so. But it does not cover the total surface surface of the rocks. So just, you know, the light has a funny way of catching on the rocks, and it doesn't catch everywhere the same way. If you look at the photo, that's a good reference to decide where you want to have the highlights on your rocks. I like that little pointy rock. It has a pretty nice light on the photo. And this background rock here also catches the light pretty well. And it goes down a little bit that way. Now I'm adding even more white to my gray, coming back here. And this bottom one has a little light on it, like so. And now with a little bit of a darker light, I'm adding a little yellow to it, because I realized that there are these background rocks that I didn't highlight. It doesn't need to be super highlighted, but it could be just a little bit. And then this here could be just a little darker than this. So now you can use this also in this back here. So now we've put some highlights on our rocks and they pop. And that's sufficient, because that's not where the center of interest is. It's over here. Well, you guys painted it so much better than I did. I mean, this just indicate that this is where the tree goes. All righty then.